you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Snap Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College, Dabigo Road. GMS Snap Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.
Hello and welcome. This is Second Take with IDK. My name is Mebo Kebirunji. So glad you could join us. We have interacted quite a bit this Easter weekend. I hope you have really enjoyed the content with our wonderful encyclopedia here, Isma Daka. You know, I actually tell everyone, whoever I meet about the show, I tell them I'm on a podcast with an encyclopedia.
What a kudos. You're bringing more flowers than I deserve, but I'm glad to be here.
Do you remember, actually, Isma, there was a time we were doing a show somewhere else, and I mentioned, just jokingly, that if someone asked you who scored a goal in 1912, you would know who scored the goal in any game. And then I said if there was a World Cup, and then you said, actually, there was no World Cup. You said it was something, and Sweden's won or something like that.
You must have mentioned World Cup when it was an Olympic year anyway.
Exactly, yes.
Hey, while I'm not very good with numbers, and I've seen people have invited me to their quiz shows because they have sports questions and they think I'll do a good job. I actually suck at quizzes. I've failed so many of them. The last times I did quiz and performed very well was in primary school. Remember the quiz that was sponsored by Fresh Dairy? Yeah, from way back in the day on UTV. That's one where I did quite a fair job, but ever since then I've struggled. I failed some questions in sport and I'm thinking, ooh, is that me? Is it the pressure or something? Sometimes never, but I also know some people who have been part of quiz shows and done well. My friend and colleague Swaibraul Kanyike. Then there's also Zeno Owora, if you know the gentleman, an activist in the sport of rugby. I think, remember the time when there was that university challenge sponsored by Celtel and then Zain?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
they were part of
it.
a Ugandan team that went and did very well. Zeno, very bright chap, but also very chaotic. He can be an activist on why the leaves above us should not fall. Yeah, those are some of the causes that's borders on madness. Yeah, you cannot prevent them from falling, but Zeno will tell you those leaves should not come down, and make a case for them. So he's that type of person.
Artemis. Artemis 2, yeah, which is supposed to get closer to the moon this week. But how was your Easter? We've had some good days. I don't know if you've had a good break.
Partly sad and partly wonderful. Because on Good Friday, I was in Butambala in a place called Senene, where I attended the burial of our friend and colleague, Alan Sekamate, who we laid to rest that day. And on our behalf, our colleague, Max Ali, spoke on behalf of all the journalists. And I thought there was a very, very critical message in some of the things that he said. And one of those was checking on one another, because all of us have known about Alan Sekamate's poor health over the past many years, because he had a heart condition. But even when he texted and told us he was sick, I think none of us went out of their way to go there and see, not that we would have reversed his condition, because my interest in medicine and biology per se ended in senior 1 second term, when we were being taught by Mr. Moses Mirundi, who was also the games teacher at Chibuli SS. Ever since then, I've not had any. The next time I had an interest in biology was in senior 4 when we were studying hereditary and genetics, when I got to learn about albinism and XY chromosomes, and then my interest was rekindled. So not that we would have changed Sekamate's situation at that point, but many of us felt very bad that we had not spoken to him in 3 months. Yet we had the opportunity. He had sent us text messages and informed us that he was sick. But even that he said in a way that
You wouldn't take it very
You wouldn't
serious.
take it very seriously. It's very possible to be sick of flu every now and then, or a fever, and then it goes away. So we treated it like the normal Alan. Alan is sick. So it was a very, very sad occasion. And I'm very glad for all the people who showed up for him. Many of the people from past generations of either broadcast or sports administration. I was very glad to see Dennis Mbide Sebugwao. I was glad to see Tom Damlida, formerly of KFM. He's also, I think, town clerk of Chivoga district. Glad to see our colleagues Ruben Luyombo, Dr. Pola Himbisibe, who is part of the FIFA Exco, Ahmed Hussein, the Director of Corporate Affairs now at FUFA. I traveled with also Andrew Mwangusha, my colleague with whom we've shared a very, very close relation for so many years. So it was quite an occasion to send off Alan Sekamate there. We did. Also, there's a colleague of ours who I haven't seen in some time, Yasa Kalyango. Used to be right at Daily Monitor. He's fallen on a bit of hard times since walking out of the newsroom. I also got a chance to see him and understand the situation that he goes through. So in that message, all I picked is Mark Sally reminding everyone to check on everyone. Because he said, all of us here is all we have. Yeah. And Alan Sekamate was 55 at the point of his death. And most of the people who attended his funeral, those from his generation were 52 plus. So that was the age group, and all of them have their challenges, young, fairly older families, because you could speak to many and realize their children are past senior 3 or some at university. So they've done a fairly good job, but yeah, it was quite a solemn occasion to send off Alan Sekamate. So may he so rest in eternal peace.
Amen. Reading some of your messages here regarding that, we have Mukasa Daniel Muanga, who says, thank you so much for that historical memory. As a university student, I have memories of the scoreline. We have Umar Busulwa, who says, thanks for the recap about Sekamate's life, and may his soul rest in eternal peace. Always tuned on, Sir Ismail. We have Amina Bavidie, who says, thanks Ismail Mebo for the show. Always rest in peace. Alan Chiwewa Raymond, who says, I didn't witness Alan Sekamate. I had a taste of Mark Sally on NTV Press Box, but hey, yeah, I will tell my kids that there lived a very witty orator in the name of Ismail Dakaba Chigongo. And we have Henry Senyonga, who says, rest in peace, Simonsen. And,
yeah, that was one of his other names, Alan Simonsen Sekamate. Yeah.
Derek Mubiru says, rest in peace, Mr. Alan. In my early years of growing, I couldn't miss his program. It was a must watch when the weekend games were done late at night, even if we had school the next day. And then here someone is, Walakira Charles is saying, Italy's fall from grace, another message to what we talked about. Italy's fall from grace to grass is the after effects of match fixing scandals. Players started shunning the league, and the investors ran away once they came to know that football was Chiwani. So let's start off today.
There's also the beautiful part of Easter. I mentioned the sad part of Alan.
Yeah.
Spent it largely with my family. Got a chance to travel to my village that I'll make famous. It's called Nachibembe. Yeah, Nachibembe is in Bugweri district. That's my paternal home. So I spent part of that there. And also got a chance to travel to Nambote. Nambote is my maternal birthplace, yeah? So Nambote is in Namutumba and Nachibembe is in Bugweri. So, and I met a few people when I was in Iganga district who had seen and actually had subscribed. So, neyanziza ino abantu benaga ineyo. There were 2 gentlemen I met outside of a restaurant on Saturday morning. Yeah, on Saturday morning. So I hope they get to watch this and know that, yeah, I recognize that they had actually subscribed and watched the show.
But for all the time I've known you, you have actually been an ambassador for Nachivembe. So
Nachivembe. The pronunciation is more important than than mentioning it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Isma. Let's start. Latest updates from AFCON.
Where should I start? One, on the Ugandan end, the Prime Minister, Robin Anabanja, did make a promise during this period from the last time you watched the other show that government will build and finish the stadiums on time. By August, the things that were flagged by CAF will be done on time. That's a positive. That implies that, one, the money will be available for all these projects that were flagged, the things that we did not do well. If you watch one of our previous episodes, you should be able to learn some of those things that were mentioned. The dugouts, the separation areas of the fans, and so many other things that CAF found to be wanting at the Hoima City Stadium. I also got to learn that over the last few days or a week or so, Nambole, which is managed by my friend Jamil Sewanyana, did submit the new designs to CAF. So the next phase of the construction, we're not going to build anything that has not been done by CAF. So that's one area that has been sorted, and CAF has given Nambole an approval of what they're going to be doing. Remember, they have to move the dressing rooms from the area where we know them to the opposite end of the pitch where the VIP is. And then you also have to move the media tribune, the media section, also to this side of the pitch. For these international tournaments, normally we media people have a privilege of not walking in on the same side as the ordinary fan. So some of the things that are supposed to be done at Nambole, and then there is the expansion of the capacity of the stadium. Once a previous renovation was done, Sewanyana says that the capacity was trimmed from about 40,000 to 38,000 seats. Now, they want to push that up by adding an extra 8,000 seats and get the number to 45.
How will they do it?
I wait to see. 44,000. Maybe the guys in the engineering will be able to provide that. And that would put us in a position where we can host either the opening or the closing ceremony, because under the rules of CAF and FIFA, we can only host one of those big do's by having a stadium that is anywhere above 42,000 seater capacity stadium. And we know that Tanzania have a 60,000 and Kenya building a 60,000 seater. So, and when we hosted the CHAN, we did not get any of those opening and the closing ceremony, which bring most of the attention. So hopefully that work is done and we get anywhere close to 45,000, and then we should be able to host either the opening ceremony or the final and the closing ceremony. That would be a very, very big boost in terms of Uganda's visibility. Those are some of the things that are picked up on, and hopefully they are going to be done. My only reminder, and this is all to Ugandans and the people around the AFCON, this AFCON is not about which party you support. It's not about scoring points. It's not an NRM project. No one will even care. In the end, everyone will be saying Uganda hosted the AFCON.
Yeah.
So when we fail, collectively, Uganda is going to be picked on. Yeah. When we succeed, Uganda is going to get the aplomb or the praise for the kind of work that is being done. Then in my sphere as a communications person, and I don't like the incidents of the previous week where the Minister of State for Sports, Peter Ogwang, goes out and says that FIFA had been consulted on these kind of things, almost blaming and trying to chest thump and say government has done everything. He sounded like he was trying to convince voters at a political rally. And sometimes I think politicians do not know when to draw the line.
Yeah. To
speak about things that may matter to everyone and then speak about their politics. So I thought he erred in that area. Then, unfortunately, Patrick Intega, who is the national team's officer at FIFA, and also part of the local organizing committee for the AFCON, goes and responds to him. I don't know under what jurisdiction, yeah? Because I didn't think that was a very bright idea from him. But in the end, what is supposed to happen is that we must eventually have one communications channel for the AFCON. If the spokesperson is the minister, let it be. Yeah? Not these things where you're supposed to hear from maybe the NCS General Secretary Patrick Ogwell, then you hear from maybe the former president, then a low-hanging fruit, yeah, is also speaking about the same. It does not augur well. Sounds very amateurish, sounds a bit of a country that is short on the basics, yeah? So hopefully that episode, once it's done, we get better at it. Then finally, you would really hope that in the final 6 to 8 months of preparation for the AFCON, when we have the backing of the CAF president, Patrice Motsepe, maybe there should be a weekly media briefing about the events that have happened. Because you need to create, we're not going to create a synergy. We cannot be hearing mixed messages. One moment, the minister is saying this. The next, some low-ranking officer is saying that. It doesn't help. That's why I've got to give, for example, credit to Patrick Ogwell, the General Secretary of National Council of Sports. Over this AFCON thing is gone out of circulation. And maybe that's what technocrats in government do understand very well. That at this point, it's not NCS hosting, neither is it the ministry, neither is it NRM, neither is it any political party here. Not even the president is hosting the AFCON. In the end, it's Uganda that is hosting this tournament. So regardless of our feelings for and against the AFCON, we've got to work out a way either to move in one line or not move at all.
And as you're talking about the stadium, I was thinking of Wembley. I wonder how, because I know it was recently refurbished some years ago. And, of course, they have the resources. They have, like, deep pockets. When the British team is traveling, they have their, their own plane. Let's move to England now. And I don't know where to start from. I don't know if we start with an apology to Southampton or we start with Man City and Liverpool. And I know there's a saying in Luganda, I may not pronounce it well, Owamani Takera. So I'm wondering if it applies because the Manchester City, the hat-trick from Haaland, I mean, there's so many angles that we can take this. Yeah. Where have they been? And the other time, actually, Ismail, my last thing, we were talking about a quadruple and was saying, it was between the two. Of course, you didn't like the conversation then. Probably you don't want us to talk about a double.
There was
now.
never a quadruple.
Okay. There was never a quadruple.
Okay, let me also add this. There is not going to be a double. For the Arsenal. There is no double.
I'm talking about City now.
Oh, City have already sealed their double. They've done the double.
But at that time, 2-3 weeks ago, would you have thought Manchester City were capable of actually winning a double? No,
I wouldn't. They looked short on confidence. They looked short of ideas.
The goals had dried up from Haaland.
The goals were not coming. And I remember you mentioning how Pep Guardiola sounded angry. Yeah.
Yes.
At some
he was
point.
no longer hungry. Yes. He was angry.
He sounded very, very angry about so many things that were going. And the one thing that I felt about him is that he'll always have the hunger for success. I think a coach of his stature can only keep doing this job when they still feel the energy to wake up every morning and smell green.
And clearly, he can never be written off.
You cannot. It's actually stupid and foolhardy to write off great managers. And Pep Guardiola is not only a great manager, I think he's also revolutionary. His coaching methods and the style of play have changed the game of football. Now, he's found us a final flourish to a season that was going to fizzle out and be forgotten. When we saw him the other week beating Arsenal in that Carabao Cup final, maybe some of us could have said, you show up for that final game and just win the game. And maybe they did that, but they had us on the back foot. They actually had us on the dinner table and just toyed with them before they stuck a fork in and won that game. Now, if that was a test or that was a statement, I thought this was even a bigger statement. The manner in which they took care of Liverpool.
That was a starter. This is the main course.
This is the main course because now you can no longer ignore. Actually, because Arsenal have not won into, and I'm going to get to the Arsenal, and Man City have won games against their bigger rivals over the past few weekends, you start to rethink whether they can make a run to win the league. Because my biggest doubts have always been in the fact that while they can win games of football, for them to win the league and take it away from the Arsenal, they have to win almost every remaining game in the league. But Arsenal are not doing themselves any favors. Yeah? These days, do you remember the last time Arsenal won a game of football? I don't think even many of the viewers can. That's how long it's been. So, and then City hit this stride, beat Arsenal and then beat Liverpool. And then the manner in which they do that. Yes, Liverpool were competing for about 30 to 38 minutes, but thereafter, once Man City clicked into gear, it was a case of how many. And I was reading an interview, not very pleasant if you're a fan, of Virgil van Dijk, where he said that he felt at some point Liverpool gave up. And fans can never take an excuse of a team giving up when the game is still ongoing. But they're also very clinical and very efficient. They almost scored, those 4 goals came, I think, off 6 shots on target for the entire game. This is where the bikini gets context, yeah? That's not just enough to say there were this number of shots on target or shots off target. How efficient were these shots? And that's why I thought Man City were very, very good. Even if Pep Guardiola was not on the bench because he had been suspended. So a very huge result. Off to Wembley for the semi-final. You'd be mad not to think that Man City will win the FA Cup. I think you'd be mad.
Southampton have no chance, even with this.
You can't say they don't have a chance. Even if they do, whoever they face eventually, if they knock out Southampton and get to the final, they'll be overwhelming favourites.
Okay, against Chelsea.
Whoever comes through on the other side. But I felt that was...
they should have had like Chelsea in the draw too.
Still, they could play Chelsea in the final. That's if Chelsea still matters. There's many people who think Liam Rosinia is empty.
We got 7 goals past
Port Vale.
Yeah.
Port Vale is the worst team in League One. League One is a 30 of English football. So you come from the Premier League to the Championship, then to League One, then look for the bottom team in League One. So I don't think it mattered a bit that they could go there and score 7. I actually stated that I think any 11 players that Chelsea do put out for a game against Port Vale, they should win comfortably. But there are many people who I think circumspect because of the manner in which Chelsea took care of Wrexham in the previous round, that they needed to pull out their big guns later on in the game, the kinds of João Pedro, to get a result against Wrexham. This time, once the first goal went in very early, another case of how many? Then eventually they score 7 and it's home and dry. And this week, you could argue that Liam Rosinia can sleep easy because the pressure has been piling and mounting about where eventually Chelsea would end up with their season.
Can we talk about West Ham and Leeds? Because people had walked out of the stadium and they wanted to go back, and the rules don't allow you to go back.
Yeah, they never.
And
once you get through the turnstile and it's clear that you've left the stadium, you cannot leave.
The fairy tale of Leeds, I don't know if it's a fairy tale of sorts, but I mean, to reach this level, they are doing well in the...
They're not doing well,
fairly well
okay.
in the
relegation battle. I think of the teams that are fighting relegation,
even
they have
West
the best
Ham
chance.
is there.
Yeah, West Ham is in there, but Leeds have a fair chance of staying up because they have a bit of a cushion on the bottom 3. This is their first trip to Wembley in 39 years?
Yeah.
They won the game and lost it again in the shootout because they missed the first kick, then eventually found a way to win. So they were really tested. I thought their coach, Daniel Farke, should be very, very happy about the manner in which they got past this hurdle, because you always felt going to West Ham in the cup would be a very big test, knowing that West Ham are one of those traditional sides rooted in British tradition, and it's a cup game at home at the London Stadium. It was always going to pose a very different question. So even if Leeds were leading 2-0, you always felt that once West Ham get one, then it's game on. And game on eventually 2-2 into a shootout. And Leeds just had to buy a bit of luck in that shootout, because normally if you miss your first kick in the shootout, you're on the back foot. And Leeds did against a very young goalkeeper, Herrick. who was only playing his first senior game for West Ham.
But yeah.
And in the end, Leeds just did enough, and they're into a semi-final against Chelsea, while on the other side is Man City against Southampton, who should be the story for me.
Yeah, let's actually dive deep into Arsenal and see where it went wrong for them. I had some people saying that they had their hopes in the 16-year-old Max Daumann, but I'm wondering, in your opinion, where did it go wrong? Because we had talked about it, and that team is strong enough, or is good enough, or was good enough.
Would have been.
Yeah.
I don't think they did enough to get a result. I thought they were poor in an attacking sense. Yes, they had more possession than Southampton, but they did not offer a lot of bite. Southampton had the better chances, and people are not wrong to think that Max Daumann was a solution, because of the attacking players or the creative players, I think Luke the better of all of them when he eventually got his kick, because the rest of them, they looked a bit like they had too much to eat on the Last Supper, heading into the weekend. Yeah, I think for once, and for other fans maybe for even longer, there's a genuine reason to worry, because at the most crucial stage of the season, Arsenal look leggy. They had too much to feast on before that game against Southampton. I thought they were genuinely poor in an attacking sense. They could keep the ball and knock it around what you'd expect from the Premier League side against Southampton. But even all the allegations that have claimed that Arsenal are the best team in the world could have sounded like fallacy that day. If you are told someone this is a team that is top of the best league in the world, they should smack you in the mouth, because that's how poor Arsenal were. And in the end, when Southampton got the winning goal, they deserved it as much. They had showed a lot of grit, they had showed a lot of fight. Yeah, they had showed a lot of fight, and eventually, when the opportunity came and they struck, then there was no way back for the Arsenal. So it's very concerning. It's very, very concerning. That's why in these cases, when you're chasing a league title, something this close, the next question is always about the next game, because players always speak about the next game. And sometimes you want the game to come very quickly. So the next game is very important in the Champions League.
Tuesday.
But more importantly, the one in the league against Bournemouth is as critical. That's why I've always had an opinion about these lengthy breaks. That when you've lost a game, like they did in the Carabao, I'd want my next game to come after 3 days, because then players are locked in. There is no opportunity for them to slacken and drop off. Yes, Arsenal could have kept as many as 11 players out of the international window, but you're better off, I think, for your next game to come very quickly than having a 2-week break. Doesn't help at this stage of the season when you're chasing the big titles. So it's a bit humbling for Mikel Arteta, and I like the fact that he says you can only blame him.
Yeah,
that's a responsibility that you have to take as a coach. But collectively, they were not good. They're not good.
Let's talk quickly before we go to the Champions League that you've hinted on. Chelsea, the fallout. Anything to make from the suspensions?
It's not the first time I've heard of a player. Speaking of the admiration for another club, especially when it's Real Madrid or Barcelona. So when Enzo Fernandez came out with that interview and spoke about his deep admiration and dream of playing for Real Madrid, I never imagined that he would invite this kind of consequences that he did. Sounded harmless. Yeah. It's something that players have done all their lives, all their time. We all know them for saying, I'd love to play for this club one day. And that's why player unveilings can be very boring. At every unveiling, the players have a dream. I don't know how many times I dream. I don't dream as many. And even if I do not remember my dreams. So sometimes it's a bit bothering in that sense. But when Enzo Fernandez said that he had a dream and would love to play for Real Madrid one day, I never at some point felt it would this would be the story that Chelsea have made it out to be, because they've suspended him for 2 games. He missed the game against Port Vale. He'll miss the next league game, which I think should be against Man City, because in the next 2 games they play Man City and Man United. So it was a bit troubling how it was handled. I don't know whether there is something deeper, because we're talking about a player for whom Chelsea paid in excess of £100 million. So when they invest that kind of money, it's supposed to be a critical figure of the team. It's supposed to be part of the spine of that team. And over the recent past, I think Enzo Fernandez has played football that is sufficient for him to be part of the leaders of the side. And I think he's one of the captains of his side, outside of Reece James, the ones who wear the armband without Reece James. He's one of those. So it didn't look, for me, it looked very dirty. It felt a bit like washing your linen and then putting it out for the public to see. I felt that's what Chelsea did in that case of suspending Fernandes, because there is nothing new. There is nothing new in it, but they've made a storm out of a teacup. Part of my conclusions about what he said is because of Real Madrid-friendly publications, like The Marca. But we've also had a chance to see the explanation from the agent, Enzo Fernandez's agent, because what he exactly said does not say that he wants to play for Real Madrid. He says that he loves the city Madrid because it looks like Buenos Aires.
Where he's from.
Where he's from. Now, what would a footballer want in Madrid if he saw football? Yeah? Is it the restaurants? Is it the roads? Is it the presidency? What would he exactly want in Madrid? Because for me, this is a case of if it walks like a duck and twacks like a duck.
Quacks.
Quacks like a duck. You know, quacks like a duck. I don't know where my mind is. But it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. When you're a footballer, and maybe this is sometimes where I feel sorry for these young superstars at 17, and where they end up with their journeys, is that we have so high expectations of them, and these are very young boys. They are 23, they are 24, they are 25. But the world expects them to be perfect in many of the things they do. And one of the things they do is communicate routinely with the media, and we expect them to be able to do it well. I've always argued that I'm able to call you stupid without saying you're stupid. But I don't expect anyone else who is not an expert in communication like I am to be as good in telling someone you're stupid without being offensive, yeah? So sometimes I feel sorry for these players, because with 2-3 months to the end of to the start of a transfer window, why does it then find Madrid beautiful? What's wrong with London? Doesn't it like the narrow roads or the black taxis or something? What doesn't it like about the red buses? What doesn't it like about London? So sometimes they will make mistakes and clubs have to be more understand. That's why my first argument is Chelsea have made a storm out of a teacup. I don't think there was anything in it that warrants a suspension. Okay. But they've decided to go that route and try to get the headlines elsewhere.
Okay, speaking about headlines, Liverpool head over to PSG. After the fiasco of the FA Cup, can Salah, Nunes, Diaz find some goals?
Over the 2 legs, Liverpool conceded at least 6 or 7 goals against PSG. Do they have enough in them to score 8? No. I don't think they do. And actually, I have a strong feeling that barring a miracle of biblical proportions, this is the end of the road for Liverpool, barring a miracle.
And Ancelotti.
And it's also the end of Ancelotti. In the manner in which they were beaten by Man City, if they walk out a few days later and then concede 3 or 4 against PSG, and then next week also concede 3 or 4 against PSG in the return leg, Ancelotti will be gone at the end of the season. I don't think they would sack him in the immediate aftermath of the game. They will allow him complete the league games, and then they have to move on. One of the things that you've got to fear for Liverpool is that they had an opportunity, I think, to put something right against City and miss that. Then I also think they're quite unlucky that they're going to be playing against PSG in this kind of form. Early in the season, PSG were wobbly, they were struggling, there were questions, they were talking about fatigue and how much football they had played, get the Club World Cup final last season, they had an injury to Ousmane Dembele. Now, all of a sudden, after all those struggles for several months, PSG looks like a team that was as good as when they won the Champions League last season. So, if they bring all those attributes to the table, Luis Enrique is able to ensure that these players play as almost as good as they did last season, then Liverpool stand no chance.
Okay.
They'll be there for a feast.
I hope, I don't know what Sporting are thinking about, especially after Arsenal losing to Southampton. We know Sporting to be very structural. How do Arsenal respond?
I think Arsenal's challenge now is going to be confidence and the questions they are facing. After those two results, the one against City and then the humbling against Southampton, there's going to be so many questions. I think for me it's about confidence. They need some kind of response. Sporting and Arsenal do not belong the same stratosphere in Europe. Ordinarily, Arsenal should be able to win the game over the two legs. But they've created a doubt, and we also, even in the previous round against Bayer Leverkusen, that actually Arsenal are there for the taking, yeah? That you just have to be brave, have a go at them, that eventually they can crack. And have a very big fear that if Sporting Lisbon take a lead at home, and that place will be buzzing, that stadium in Lisbon will be buzzing, then Arsenal start to doubt themselves, because then they are thinking, here we go again. So for me, it's about a bit of confidence. Maybe Mikel Arteta needs to rejig his team a bit and bring in some fresh faces. One of those maybe could be Christian Mosquera, who should come in for Gabriel, who we saw get injured in that game against Southampton. Needs to find some fresh legs here and there. Maybe Martin Odegaard, needs to reassert himself as the lead of this pack to ensure that he gives us something extra, because they seem to be lacking a lot. Most of their key players have gone out of form and out of touch at a very wrong stage in the season. So this is an opportunity for them to reassert themselves. And if you play at this top level, you jump at chances like this, if you're the Arsenal.
Okay. Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, on paper, they look, more or less the same. But when it comes to Europe, there's something about Real Madrid. You can't bet against them.
Yeah, it should be a very intriguing fixture. The two of them have put up some classics. I remember many years ago, more than 20, or 99, should be 99. I think Bayern beat Madrid home and away, 4-1 and 4-2. And there's been several others of similar, not necessarily similar scorelines, but where one of them can win both the home and away, or the home and away leg. So should be a very intriguing fixture. The bigger questions I think will rely with Real Madrid. While Alvaro Arbeloa has not done too poorly, he's also not done well either. So sometimes you want to question why Xabi Alonso left the side. So there are things there that they've been short of. He's lucky now that he has Kylian Mbappe back in the side. Now, some of the questions I think for me are in terms of selection. Does he go with what would be sort of a double pivot with Tchouameni and Camavinga, because they haven't played together very often, and when they did at the weekend, they could not win that game. Then did you play Adagula as a number 10 or a second striker? There are just small things that he has to sort out, and those questions are one of those that Arbeloa has to deal with. Remember that he's also rotated his squad at the weekend and brought in Eder Militao, who has had an injury-ravaged career at Real Madrid. And now it is to find a way to find the right balance for me. Because the team is facing, I think, know their way around football now. that even in cases where they are missing Harry Kane, it may not tell in La Liga. I think they might need Harry Kane for fixtures in Europe more than they need him in the Bundesliga. So there's going to be, for Vincent Kompany, there isn't so much he can do besides whether Harry Kane is fit or not. The rest of the other 11 picks itself. He knows who is supposed to play what and what kind of role they are going to be able to help the team. For them, it's about the fitness of Harry Kane. If he's fit, he starts the game for me. It doesn't matter. You might need him for a game like this one because of the other attributes that they have in Michael Olise, in Luis Diaz. You don't expect them to drop below in terms of performance. But sometimes when you need a big goal scorer against Real Madrid over the two legs, I think Harry Kane might guarantee you 3 goals over the two legs, and they might need that kind of number for them to be able to knock out Real Madrid.
Okay. Let's move on to Atletico Madrid, Barcelona versus Atletico Madrid. Can Atletico, find a way past, did I say Barcelona?
Yeah.
I thought I said Real Madrid. Can Atletico find a way past the creative spark of Pedri, Lamine Yamal, and the possession of Barcelona?
Very, very difficult. But we also know that this season, Atletico Madrid beat Barcelona 4-0 in the Copa del Rey. The first leg, and then in the return leg, Barcelona won the return encounter by 3 goals. It wasn't sufficient to overturn the result. So they have it in them. If they have it in them, yes, they do. For them to be able to beat Barcelona and knock them out, I think they need to win, first of all, the first leg. While there isn't this home and away rules anymore, that games no longer have away goals rule and all, you do not want to hand Barcelona an opportunity to walk into that second leg where they have the upper hand. We saw what they did with Newcastle in the last round. After that draw that Newcastle handed them at St. James Park, they conceded 7 and eventually lost 7-2 in the return encounter. So I feel Diego Simeone and Atletico Madrid need to find their results or their rhythm at the Wanda Metropolitano. And when they do that, they'll give themselves a very good opportunity. They've got to put away their chances. Besides being solid defensive, they've got to put away their chances. When they get them, I think Julian Alvarez is going to be very critical in what Atletico Madrid do, considering that they're going to be underdogs for this. But also the running power of the coach's son, Giuliano Simeone, who plays off the right flank. The amount of support that he can give that flank to Marco Llorente, because I think that the right side is their stronger point other than the left, because of running power, and then Marco Llorente can play across several positions, because when we first watched him, he was playing in midfield. So those are the areas for me that Atletico have to be very, very strong for them to get the results, considering that Barcelona will have the majority of possession.
Yeah.
They'll probably create more chances than Atletico Madrid do. But you've got to do the things that are within your ability if you're Atletico. And one of them has to be efficient, but also defensive grit. If you do that, you have an opportunity over the two legs.
Okay. Let's talk about the Uganda Cup, and it was exciting times for URA against KCCA. That game ending
they did a West Ham late.
Yes, ending in penalties. And of course, Hussein Mbalangu, whom I like. I've never met him, and I know you meet him. Maybe next time you meet him at the mosque, you tell him you have a friend who says hello. Is this proof of his tactical ability?
No.
It's
a lot to do with KCC losing their way. Led 2-0, very comfortable. Did not look like they would concede, and this into the 80th minute and beyond. And then URI scored twice in that final period, and then forced extra time, and then eventually penalty shootout. While penalties are a lottery, I do not like the penalty that Herbert Achai took. If you get a chance to see it, I do not like a penalty without a run-up. I do not like a penalty without a run-up. I could repeat that. You stand right behind the ball. How are you going to generate energy behind that when you're standing still? Then you hit the ball. I thought that was a very, very poor penalty. And I could sound very stupid to criticize someone missing a penalty, But for me, the basic, have a run up, probably hit the ball as hard as you can. And for me, to put the ball within the four frames of the goal, because also playing it out was not a good idea. But I thought KCC lost the game more than URA won it. That was, for me, the critical area. So in a season that has been very terrible for URA, Hussein Mbalango has found something very small to celebrate by getting the team into the semi-finals of the Uganda Cup. That perhaps keeps him in the job at URA beyond this season. If they could go on a run and maybe perhaps win the Uganda Cup, the managers at URA FC will think about him as a longer-term solution.
Okay. So with that analogy, would you say, I ask, were Vipers lucky, or does luck favor the prepared?
I've seen a lot of debate about the penalty that was retaken by Abdul Karim Watambala, because there's a double touch on the ball. Now, because these days we live in the information age, I think everyone watched that penalty that Julian Alvarez took in the game between Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid in the Champions League, that had that double touch because he hit the ball and then it struck the other foot and then went in and it was cancelled. In the case of Julian Alvarez, now because of the complaints thereafter, it's okay to study. Jeremiah. Because of the complaints thereafter, IFAB, the body that deals with the rules, has actually changed the rule. That when there's a double touch on the ball, you get a chance to retake. And we also saw, besides Julian Alvarez, there was also a penalty that was cancelled by Paul Muchures, I think, in a game between NECA and Blacks Power in the Uganda Cup at the MTN Omondi Stadium in Lugogo. There was also that. Now, in the past, when you took a double touch, you forfeit that. The goal does not count, but also you forfeit the chance. Now, the rules were changed. Now you retake the penalty. Yeah, and that's how Abdul Karim Watambala retook it and eventually scored. So you've got to give the referee his flowers for being able to be that aware of the rules and be able to apply them instantly. However, had Watambala taken that penalty and it had a double touch and he misses it and the ball goes out of play, he doesn't retake it. The rules say the double touch is allowed if you score. So then you retake it. Yeah? But if he ballooned that outside of the four frames of the goal, then he doesn't retake. He forfeits it. So those are the rules.
Our happy boys are playing today, but let's talk about Kitara and Express.
No contest. 3-0 for Kitara. George Senkaba with the pair. I never felt they had an opportunity. I never felt Express were going to go to Kitara and get a result, let alone compete. I never felt they were going to compete at all. So in the end, Kitara through. We should be looking forward to the draw. At least the teams that have got through are the teams that you want to be there, yeah, and compete. And I would love a situation where Kitara is drawn against Vipers and the game is in Hoima.
Yeah.
Then Kitara can take that game to the Hoima City Stadium and fill it up again. Would be a very, very good idea. That's if the construction allows them to be able to use the stadium. But I've made my wish in terms of what the draw should give me. So hopefully when it comes out, I turn out right.
Okay, let's go back to...
Okay, also the semi-finals have a home and away inclination. So there will be a game at Chiten and then in Hoima, unless the rules have changed again.
Okay.
But the semi-final stage, you get to play home and away.
Okay, let's talk about La Liga, where relegation, they're fighting relegation. Mallorca beat Real Madrid.
Mallorca very famous for those back in the day when Samuel Eto'o would show up for only this game against Real Madrid and get a goal. And then thereafter he joined Barcelona. Remember, he had been a Real Madrid academy player before he was sent out to Mallorca, and Lloris got the goal against him. I think this weekend sucked out what would have been a title race. There's a time I was arguing here that would love a situation where Del Clasico later on in May will decide on who wins the La Liga. But now with a 7-point lead, because as you mentioned, I don't think these results work in isolation. That Real Madrid lose 2-1, then that's it. Because then we can debate the rotation, because they made changes to ensure that they have a squad for the game against Bayern Munich. But that result, I think, is also very critical and terminal for Real Madrid, because Barcelona won their game coming from behind to beat Atletico Madrid. Very lucky circumstances in the manner in which Robert Lewandowski scored that winning goal. The ball must just struck him, from the goalkeeper and then onto his body. Then it goes in. So I think this result is terminal. And should Alvaro Arbeloa not get a result in the Champions League, then Real Madrid might be appointing a coach before the season comes to a logical conclusion. This result sucked out everything they had in terms of a title race, coupled with Barcelona's victory at the Wanda Metropolitano. That, for me, that changes the dynamic of everything in terms of a title race. It's done and dusted. Done and dusted for me.
Would you say the same in France, where PSG extended their lead on top?
Yeah, to 4 points, because the manner in which Racing Lens were beaten by Lille, 3-0, does not look for very good viewing. And consider that they had played there after PSG had beaten Toulouse by 3-1. I think Racing Lens have now gone out of the title race. It's a 4-point lead. After being very competitive for most of the season, you can no longer make a case for Racing Lens to be able, or Racing Lens, like it's called in French, for them to be able to get the kind of results together over a period of time and then hope that PSG drop points in 2 games. Luckily for them, maybe, if you believe PSG will not win the league, is that Racing Lens will play PSG at some stage. So if they win that and then probably hope PSG drop points somewhere else, then there's a proper title race.
Okay, and let's move on to Italy. Where and how did Roma collapse or crumble?
They were not
Inter Milan.
they were not in a contest the moment they conceded in the first minute of the game. I've always felt that Inter Milan are a totally different beast the moment Lautaro Martinez is fit. And he's been out injured for quite a period of time, returned in this game, and actually scored in the first minute of the game. And I thought thereafter, Roma's challenge was snuffed out. Their push for Champions League football, for me, will continue in the other games, but they lost in Milan the moment they conceded in the first minute. And Martinez eventually scored twice, and you could almost tell how much the team needed him. The kind of celebration the Marcus Thuram and the others gave him, the kind of adoration they showed for him, shows that he's actually their leader. So, very, very important result for Inter Milan, because they need to put a bit of a cushion between themselves and Napoli and Milan. And for them to do that by sending a 5-2 statement against Roma, who have been one of the better teams this season, I thought
for Europe.
I thought Cristian Chivo can start to count his chickens in his first season as Inter Milan coach.
Okay, let's talk now about heavyweights. Chisora versus Wilder. Isn't this like a recipe for violence?
No. I was actually very happy to see Deontay Wilder back in the ring. The Bronze Bomber, like he's called, he's had some terrible fights because people describe him as a one-trick pony. And to describe a heavyweight as a one-trick pony can also be very disrespectful. So I was pleased, and the nature in which the fight went, it was a proper boxing match. Not a lot of these details of science, how sport these days is described as a sweet science. It's played with a lot of methods, methodical approach and all. This felt a bit like old school between Wilder and Chisora, and in the end, Chisora gave as much as he received. Went down on his canvas, I think, in the 8th and in the 11th. And in the end, went down to the judges, who gave it to Deontay Wilder 2-1. At a time when boxing, I think, is desperate for a big fight.
Yeah.
The gentleman who was here Terence Crawford, who visited Uganda, decided to retire when boxing perhaps still needed him. Then you have Tyson Fury, who retires every 2 years. Okay, now he's back. Then you have Alexander Usyk.
Yeah.
Then you have I've mentioned Anthony Joshua, who has been ducking every fight. Then you
Since
have
the accident, I think.
Yeah. Now, of course, then the accident. Then you have Canelo Alvarez, who is the other of the lower weight guy. So the sport seems to be stuck to having to see Floyd Mayweather fight again every other 2 or 3 years, or twice a year, whenever he feels like he needs some money to pay his taxes or tax obligations. So I thought this was refreshing, even if the boxers are now on the wrong side of 40 and are both going to be walking away from the sport very soon. I thought the quality of the fight in itself, big flowers. I would give it a thumbs up to both Wilder and Chisora in terms of what they gave it. And for all the things that I find information about, I was also fairly shocked and pleased to learn that Derek Chisora is actually originally from Zimbabwe. Yeah, and he's only settled in the UK and now fights out of the UK. But very good heavyweight fight, I thought, in the end, that Deontay Wilder won.
Okay. And this section for why should we care about the regular ending of the NBA season?
Or the ending of the regular season of the NBA. I don't know why you chose to rearrange the words into something else. But anyway, we are into the final stage of NBA. So I already see a lot of people who come to my TL and even in the YouTube comments and ask, how come we don't do a lot of the NBA here? But I always do not like to do stories just because we have talked about them. There must be some meat to the bone. We can be able to discuss everything, including why clouds are like cotton, are not like cloth. But there has to be meat to them. So I think the bigger story now is that the regular season is almost done. So we have most of the placements for the teams that have made it to the playoffs and those that are still fighting in the play-in. I'd want to mention maybe 1 or 2 stories. One is that the Lakers, after having a fairly good season, they should now be fighting to hang on to that 3rd place. And it might be unfair that they will not get that position because they've lost 2 players to injury. Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves will not be playing any part of the regular season anymore. And for Austin Reeves, they could be out for 4 to 6 weeks in terms of that injury timeline. So I would almost argue that now they're in big trouble with 2 of their 3 big players. So they might fall out of that top 3 and eventually get overtaken by the Denver Nuggets, who are making a bit of a run. And over the weekend, they were able to beat the San Antonio Spurs by just 2 points. Nikola Jokic, a game between Nikola Jokic and Victor Wembanyama. In the end, Jokic got the better of Victor Wembanyama. So Lakers, for me, are in big trouble. If Luka Doncic especially does not come back from that hamstring problem sooner rather than later, they could find themselves getting knocked out very early in the first round of the season. For me, those are the 2 very big storylines from the Western Conference that cannot be ignored as the regular season wraps up. And I also saw Steph Curry is back. He's had lots of injuries. This season he's back from injury, but his return could not help his Golden State Warriors win their first game because they were beaten by the Houston Rockets by the 1 point, I think 117 to 116. But a totally different ball game with him in the side. Totally different ball game, different team than they've been for most of the season. So should be very exciting. And for me, when the playoffs start, it's almost the start of an entire new season.
Yeah.
So by end of this week, the regular season should be done, and then we get the play-in tournament, and then the playoffs proper, because the rules have changed. Because previously we used to have number 1 to 8, but now it's number 1 to 6 through, and then number 7 to 10, playing a play-in tournament and then get the playoffs proper to complete the entire roster of 8 teams. So we should be knowing the composition of those entirely. There's still even a fight for seed 1, for example, in the West between OKC and San Antonio. right at the end of the regular season, there will be some small storylines, but I've learned over the past few years that the injuries are playing a very big factor in who ends up as champion in the NBA. So watch out for those who gets injured, because now Lakers, who are going in this direction, Luka Doncic gets injured, and then Austin Reeves, and then they are going in this direction immediately thereafter. So I think that's going to be the dominant story of the final weeks or so. There's also Cade Cunningham, who has been one of the best players in the Eastern Conference for the Detroit Pistons. He's also been struggling with what is described as a collapsed lung. He's not been playing for the past several weeks. Sometimes the NBA is determined by the healthiest team. The team that has the less number of injuries is very likely to walk out as champion sometime in June.
Okay, so we'll keep it here. Keep watching the space there. Thank you for watching. Keep the comments coming. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing. And most importantly, thank you for subscribing. So tell others about the show. This is Second Take with Isma Dakava Chigongo.
Are you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College Nabigo Road. GMS Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.